Creating Polygon Primitives. Hello friends, we've taken a huge step forward into Maya. In fact, it's a brave step. I promise you it's half the work done for being taken a step in Maya. From here on, it's not about working in Maya, it's all about involving in Maya. From here on, you have to be inspired in Maya rather than perspiring in Maya. From here on, it's all about creating beauty in Maya. Thus, in the previous chapter, we had just taken an outer look onto Maya, which is nothing but working over the interface elements. From here, we're going deep into Maya. With that, let's go on to the lesson. Here in this tutorial, and in the tutorials to follow, we're going to work with polygons. Now, before that, we should know what polygons are made of. In general, polygons are termed as faces with many sides. They are named according to the number of sides they will have in them. Three-sided polygon objects are triangles, four-sided quadrilaterals, and so on. Alright, enough of the terminologies. Let's have a straight-ahead look as to what polygons or polyobjects are made of. Here in this scene, we have a polytriangle, which is nothing but the triangle made of polygonal components. Now, what are those components? We're not able to look at them. Place the cursor over the object and just right-click over it, and you'll get a lot of options. As mentioned in earlier lessons, these are the components that are unique to the polygonal objects. And through these options, we can go to the particular component mode of the object. We'll discuss what actually these components are as we move forward. Now, if you drop the cursor over the vertex option, watch what you get in the object. If I zoom in, you can see the object has sort of red-colored dots around the corners. What are these? These dots are the basic components of a polygon object, and they are termed vertices. The line that joins these two vertices is termed an edge. Thus, with the attachment of these three vertex by these three edges, we get a polygonal face. Thus, a poly object is made of several vertices and edges and faces, constructed together with the basic structure being this. Now, if I just pan the scene, here we have lots of poly objects. If I right-click over this object placed second and go to the vertex option, or we can just hit F9 from our keyboard, which is the shortcut to the vertex mode of the object. See what we've got. We have the same vertex and edges, but the poly face is made of 4 vertices and 4 edges. These are quadrilaterals. Now over here we have an object next to that. If we go ahead and either right-click and select vertex, or F9 from your keyboard to get to the component mode, then we have a poly object that's made of 5 vertices and 5 edges. Thus, it goes on and on. But for the most part, and almost all the time, the polygonal objects we'll be working with will be 4 vertices and 4 edged objects, the quadrilaterals. Now, I'll tell you why is that. Why are we learning about texturing? But for now, just keep it in mind. We are going to work with only quadrilateral poly objects, in which a face is made of 4 vertices connected together by 4 edges. For that matter, the polygon primitives that Maya creates by default are all quadrilaterals. Now let's go ahead and create a polygon sphere, as we always do from the shelf. If I right-click over the object and select vertex, or with the object select F9, we get the object's component mode, or the vertex mode. If I just zoom in and orbit the object, watch that the object is almost made of quadrilaterals. Now I hope you understand what poly objects are made of. And with that, we have come to the end of this lesson. From here we'll go ahead and learn on how to select poly objects in the lessons to come. Working with poly components. In the previous lesson we learned about what polygons are made of. Now in this tutorial we're going to learn how to work with the components of the polygon. Now we have a scene open here in Maya, and an object at the center of the scene, which is the poly object. Now just right-click over the object to get the marking menus and go to the vertex mode. Watch carefully when I place the cursor over the purple-colored vertex. It turns red. Now what does that mean? The curry's ready to eat? No. It's the pre-selection highlight, which is nothing but it denotes the user that the vertex is ready to be selected. Now if you don't get the red color, as we got, with Ctrl and Shift button held together on our keyboard, right-click anywhere over the interface region, and here we get a couple of options. And when we go to select option over here, watch that we get even more options. Over here, make sure that the pre-selection highlight is checked. The cross mark at the pre-selection highlight represents that the option has been checked. Now, if it's unchecked, you won't get the pre-selection highlights, which is the red color highlightation. Now, with the pre-selection highlight option checked, when I just click once over any of the vertex, watch that the selected vertex turns yellow, stating that the vertex has been selected. Now, if you're not in translate mode, go to translate mode by hitting W on your keyboard, and you'll get the transform gizmo over the components that we selected. Now, if you hit the up arrow, watch the above vertex get selected. If you keep on hitting the up arrow, the vertex selection shifts one level up. Similarly, we can shift the selection to the right or to the left by hitting the right or left arrows, respectively, from our keyboard. Not only that, with the vertex selected, you can just hold down the Shift button and click the unselected vertices to add on selection. And Control-click over the selected vertices to remove the vertices from multiple selection. Now, with any of the vertices selected, if you translate them, see that we can reposition the vertices so as to manipulate the shape of the object. Now, next component, the edge. Let's go ahead and select the edge. Oops, watch what happens. We can't select the edges. Why is that? Well, this is because we have to be in edge component selection mode to be able to select them. Now, how do we go about that? The same way we selected the vertex. Now, right-click over the object and select edge from the options. Now, if I go ahead and drag the cursor over the object, watch that only the edges get highlighted in order to select them. In the first hand, we can't see any vertex in this scene. Similar to vertices, you can shift-click over the edges to add on edge selection, or Control-click to remove edges from selection. Now watch what happens when I double-click over an edge. The entire loop of edges gets selected. Thus, you can either double-click over a vertical edge to select the vertical loop of that edge, or you can click over a horizontal edge to select the horizontal loop of that edge. In this way, Maya saves lots and lots of time for the user in selecting components. Now, with the required edges selected, we can go to any of the transform modes and we can transform the edges. Now, if you right-click over the object and choose Face from the options, if we just drag the cursor over the object, watch that only the face gets highlighted in order to select it from leaving between the vertex and the edges. Similar to the other two components, we have all the same options to work with face. I'd like for you to go ahead and practice those. With all that being done with components, just right-click and go to the object mode to exit from any of the component modes. Now with that, we've come to the end of the lesson. But before wrapping up, Maya's going to let you out with a surprise. What is that? You're getting a little bit tired of going to different component modes and then selecting these components? Well, don't worry. Maya has given you an easier way to save all your energy. Now, go ahead and right-click over the object and select this multi option. If I drag the cursor over the object, watch what happens. Any component that comes in the way of the cursor gets highlighted so as to prompt the user to select it. Thus, through this option, we can select any of the components of a poly object from a single instance, unlike previously where we had to switch between component modes to select that particular component. Amazing, isn't it? But it's not over yet with this lesson. Maya has got some surplus stuff contained in it for the user. We'll go ahead and keep on exploring them in the lessons to come. Now thus we're at the end of this tutorial. In our next lesson, we'll learn to work with multiple poly objects in a scene. So, off we go. Create Polygon tool. Combine, separate, and booleans. Hello there. In the previous couple of lessons, we've learned about polygons and the components of polygons and the ways of selecting them. In this tutorial, we'll go ahead and learn about the ways of interacting with multiple polygonal objects. Now, before going on to work with them, I'd like to make mention that, as of now, we've created polygon primitives, mainly of quadrilaterals, that being four-sided objects. But where to create a three-sided or multiple-sided polygon object? Well, we'll do that now with the help of Create Polygon tool in this newly opened Maya scene. Before going to the options for any polygon tool, you need to evoke the menus for the polygons in the shelf. Always keep in mind that we can get the options or tools for polygon modeling only if we're in polygons mode over here in the status line. So if you're not, change it to Polygons. With that note, let's go to Mesh menu over here, and in the Create Polygon Tool option at the very below, open up the option box to get the Tool Settings window, and go ahead and reset the option once by clicking this Reset button. With the tools reset, close the window by clicking this small arrow over here. Now go ahead and click once anywhere in the interface to place the first vertex of our poly object that we are going to create. Now go ahead and click elsewhere to place the second vertex. Watch as I finish my click. We get an edge for these two vertices that we placed. And when we click again to place the third vertex, watch that we get the first face for these three vertices and edges. Thus we need at least 3 vertices to create a poly object, which we mentioned in the early tutorials. But we're not finished yet. You can go ahead and place any number of vertices to create the number of sides, which are nothing but the edges that we require in our polygon object. Now once finished, hit Enter to exit the Create Polygon tool. And with that, we have created a poly object with the desired number of sides in our scene. This is creating polygons. Now let's learn how to combine and separate multiple poly objects. Unlike grouping objects, which we saw in the grouping objects tutorial, where we brought the objects under a common node and worked with grouped objects, here in combining objects, we combine the objects in a way that they remain in a single mesh. But we can't work with the individual objects which we combined, unlike the grouped objects. Now let's go ahead onto this new scene where we have 2 polygonal objects. Select the first object and hold Shift and select the second object, or just marquee select the 2 objects so as to select 2 of them, and then now go to Mesh menu and click this option, Combine. Watch what happens. Both the objects combine to form a single mesh with the new pivot common to both of them created at the center of the scene. Thus they represent a single object. Similarly, we can combine any number of objects. Now with the combined objects selected, go to Mesh and click once over the Separate option, and that will separate the combined objects. And as you can see, they have been. Now watch as we select the object. The object's pivot resides at the center itself. It might be a hindrance at times while transforming objects with the pivot away from the object. We can always go ahead and center the pivot to the object by selecting the object and in the Modify menu, clicking this option Center Pivot. Watch as I finish the click, the pivot gets centered to the object. Well, what's the ultimate purpose of orienting this pivot? Well, we know that the use of this is when we go to the next lesson. But for now, let's just learn about the other ways of combining and separating objects called the Booleans. Let's go to Booleans. Now, how do the Booleans differ from the Combine and Separate option? Well, here in the Booleans, we really do interact with objects and form new shapes rather than the mere attachment as in Combine. All right, let's go on and learn about them. Now, we have 2 individual objects in this scene, and these 2 objects interconnect with each other. Now with the 2 objects selected, go to Mesh and click Combine. Now if we just pan the scene a bit, we have another set of individual objects interconnecting with each other. With these 2 objects selected, go to Mesh menu and click this Booleans option to get these sub-options. Now go ahead and click the first option, Union. Well, it appears nothing happened, right? We can't find any difference between the combined objects and the objects that are made union through Booleans. But believe me, there is a difference. Now, hit 4 on the keyboard to go to the wireframe mode, and if we watch the objects closely, first here at the combined objects, it actually attaches to each other with no other transformation in the object, and we can see the interconnected part of both of these mesh. Now if I go ahead and pan the object we booleaned, watch that we can see the object has been altered. That is, these 2 objects attach to each other and lose the areas which are common to them. These 2 objects don't pass through and just lie, unlike the combined objects over here. Thus in Boolean's union, the 2 meshes attach to each other and lose the interconnected area. Now let's look at the other options in Booleans. Now we have a new scene here with 2 individual objects interacting with each other. Now select this object A and Shift select the object B and go to Mesh menu, and in the Booleans option click the second option, Difference. And watch what happens. the object B, along with its parts that interact with the object A, disappear. It's nothing but A minus B mathematically. B gets subtracted from A leaves with its remaining. Simple as that. Now let's go ahead and finish off the third option. Now if I select these two objects in our scene and hit intersection from the same Booleans option, watch what happens. The intersection part of the two objects alone remain, ripping off the unintersected parts. Now I hope you've got a clear idea about the difference between mesh combine and Booleans and the type of Booleans that we have. With that, we'll go ahead and learn about mirroring options that Maya has for the polygonal objects and the main application of combine and separate, which we saw earlier in this tutorial. Mirroring geometries. In the previous tutorial, we had the objects combined and separated and learned various ways of interacting with the objects in the form of Booleans. In this tutorial, we'll take a look at the types of mirroring and also slicing polyobjects. Alright, let's go forward. Let's take a look at the mirror cut option. With this option, it mirrors our objects and provides us with a plane of symmetry to reorient the mirrored object's position. We'll clear it off with this scene, where we have two similar objects in the scene. Now go to Mesh menu, and over here click open the Mirror Cut option box. First, reset the settings. Now with the default options, click Apply. Now what this tool has done to our object is created a plane of symmetry in the direction that we specified over here. And this option, merged with original, created the mirrored object as a single mesh along with the original object. Now with this plane of symmetry selected, if I go ahead and click this blue circle, I can transform the symmetry of plane as I wish. Now with the symmetry selected, just translate it, and watch what happens as we translate the symmetry. The object gets mirrored away. Now if I hit delete with the symmetry selected, the objects beyond the symmetry get deleted. But we want the object as such with mirror. Well, let's hit Ctrl-Z to go to previous, where we are. Now go ahead and select the object and go to Edit menu and select Delete by Type option and click History. With that done, if I click the plane and delete it, watch that the object remains as we mirrored it. Now, what we've done here by deleting the history is it's made the object forget the influence of the mirror plane over it, so that the plane has nothing to do with the object, and thus we selected it and deleted it to keep the geometry we worked with. Now let's go and select this individual object in the Mirror Cut window. Let's uncheck the Merge with Original option and click Apply to the mirrored object. And now we'll translate the plane of symmetry and watch what happens when I select the vertices of the original object and translate them. Did you notice? The duplicate object too gets modified at the same point of transformation. That's what this option does when unchecked. This type of mirroring can be done to objects like street posts, which lie along two sides of the street, so you can work with a single object and the mirror object transforms as the mother object, and you can save a lot of time. With enough of that, we're going to take a look at the Mirror Geometry option. Mirror Geometry, as the name suggests, creates the duplicate of an object. But one might ask, why the duplicate option? Well, here in the Mirror Geometry, it has additional sets of options in its arsenal than the duplication. Let's go ahead and explore them. Here we have two similar geometries with the names of A and B. We'll go ahead and apply the mirror options that we have to these objects and explore each of these options. Now go to Mesh and click Mirror Geometry option box and reset the setting once, and with the object A selected, click Apply. Look at what you've got. We get the object A mirrored in the direction that we mentioned here, that positive X, and we can specify any direction over here. Now select the Connect Border Edges option and select the object B and click Apply. See what happens. We get a rectangular mesh, don't we? But what has happened, and what are the border edges, and how does this object fill in? Well, let's see that now, shall we? Let's hit Ctrl-Z to undo the process and go to the point where we were earlier. And now let's learn about those border edges. The term border edge defines the interior or exterior edges in a mesh. That is, the edge that is not closed in a poly mesh. But we can't differentiate between them from the normal edge, can we? to view the bordered edge in a mesh, select the object and go to Display menu, and click over the Polygons option, and click this option Border Edges in the middle of the list. Now you see thick lines that are open, which are nothing more than the bordered edges, and the inner edges, which are not closed, are not bordered edges. They remain thin. Thus, with the object selected, if I go ahead and click Apply again, what does it do? Well, it creates the mirror as the other object, and also fills in these border edges with polyface, and creates a completed mesh. This is what happens over here. And with that, we'll wrap up this lesson. In our next tutorial, we'll learn about working with faces. Working with polygonal edges. Hello again. In the previous couple of lessons, we've learned about the wonderful tools that Maya has offered us to manipulate the entire geometry and create interactions with geometries. From here on, we'll learn about the ways of transforming a single geometry with the powerful modeling tools that Maya has offered us. Alright, on to business. Here in this tutorial, we're going to take a look at the tools that would be applied to transform an object with edges. Now, in Maya, we have a handful of tools for transforming an object with edges. As we move on, we'll familiarize ourselves with them. Alright, with that note, let's go ahead and learn them. Ahead of them all, the Split Polygon tool is first. Why is that? Well, as the name suggests, it's going to split a polyface with edges. It's just going to cut a face's edges with the edge that we're going to create. Now, with that note, let's go on to the scene. Here we have a scene open in Maya with an object. And now, what if we want this top surface of the object to be raised, sort of like the roof of a house? But where to rise from? It seems impossible from the divisions that we now have in this mesh. Well, we'll do this with the help of the Split Polygon tool. With no further delay, go to Edit Mesh menu and open up the Split Polygon tool option box. As we always do, reset the toolbox once and close it off. Now to the object. Click once over this edge to place the first vertex for the edge that we're going to create. Don't let go of the mouse hold. With the mouse click and held, if I drag the cursor, I can place the vertex anywhere over the edge. Now if I leave the cursor, watch what happens with the first vertex is now placed. Maya prompts us to click and drag the next edge and click Enter to finish. And we will obey what Maya says. We'll go ahead and click over this edge. Watch as I finish my click. An edge splitting this space and connecting these two edges of this face have been created. And also, it prompts us to click on the other edge. Now, if I go ahead and click over any other edge, watch what happens. We've created another edge continuous with the second edge. Similarly, we can keep on adding edges. Now, if we don't want the last edge that we created, we want to create an edge over the other edge, we should be continuous with the second edge. Watch what happens when I hit Delete from my keyboard. The edge we last created got deleted. And most importantly, we haven't come out of the Split Polygon tool as of yet. Now we can go ahead and place the next edge wherever we wish. Now we'll hit Enter and we'll come out of this tool. In this way, we can create as many edges as we want in the direction that we desire. Now, what if we're not satisfied with this location of the edge? Well, we can always go ahead and slide the edges by means of the Slide Edge tool, which we're going to see now. Now go to Edit Mesh and open up the Slide Edge tool option box. And reset the tool and close it off with its default options. Now when we place the cursor over the object, it displays a tooltip to drag an edge. And we'll obey that command. Now go to the edge mode of the object and select an edge as usual. Now watch what happens when I middle click and drag the edge that we created. It repositions itself without causing any deformation to the object. Thus, with this option, we have oriented the divisions, yet the object shape has remained the same. Amazing, isn't it? This, once again, is what Maya's all about. Now let's go ahead and delete all the other edges in this face except for the edge that we created first. Now if we select this edge and translate it towards the top axis, watch what happens. We've created a roof-like structure. Now we'll move on to the next tool, the Insert Edge Loop tool. What an Insert Edge Loop tool does is, unlike the Split Polygon tool, when an edge is created on the desired face, here it creates edges all around the faces of that object as a single continuous closed edge. Now you'll understand the tool once we apply that tool over the object here in our scene. From the scene, go to Edit Mesh menu and open up the Insert Edge Loop Tool option box. And reset the tool once and close the tool settings window. Now watch when I click and hold over this edge without letting the mouse down. Watch that the dotted lines are created, which are the edges. It's dotted because we haven't yet released the cursor, and we can orient the position if we just drag the cursor without letting down the mouse, and can place the edge anywhere in the desired location. Now if I let down the cursor and just tumble the view, watch as an edge is created around the object. Maya still prompts us to create more edges, right? Well, we can go ahead and create any number of edges, but we can't pass through an edge that's already there in the object. Watch when I drag the cursor beyond the existing edge that the edge doesn't pass through. Similarly, we can also create vertical edges if we go ahead and click over any horizontal edge. We had created edges, and now we've come out of this tool. Not only to this tool, but for most tools. Hit W on your keyboard to go to transformation mode so as to exit this tool. Now we'll go ahead and learn the use of the Offset Edge Loop tool. This tool basically creates two edge loops to either side of the edge that we click in. Go to Offset Edge Loop Tool option box, and in the same Edit Mesh menu, reset the tool once, and click over Enter Tool and Close, so as to get the tool and exit the tool settings window. Now if I go ahead and click over this edge, watch what happens. Two edges, concurrent to the edge that we clicked in, show up. Now we can just drag the cursor with the mouse held to place the edges in the position that we desire, and we can let it create the edges. In this way we can place any number of offset edges. But why are we creating all these edges? Well, we know the very best use of them when we go into detail about organic and inorganic modeling, and that will be coming up in some advanced training. Well, now just go ahead and practice these options that we saw over an object. With that, we've come to the end of this lesson. In our next jaunt, we'll go ahead and learn about the ways of adding divisions to an object.